Bienvenidos al evento de celebración por el aniversario de 20 años de nuestra empresa Gepro. Mi nombre es DanielaAlarcón, soy gerente de operaciones de Gepro y quiero agradecerles por acompañarnos este día. Quisiera saludar de forma especial a nuestros directores y geprocianos presentes. Ustedes son el corazón de nuestra empresa y el motivo de que podamos celebrar 20 años el día de hoy. También quisiera saludar a nuestros asociados, ex geprocianos, colaboradores y clientes. Gracias por estar aquí. Quisimos celebrar este hito de una forma alineada con nuestra misión: traer y expandir el conocimiento sobre la excelencia operacional y desafiar los límites de la industria. Con eso en mente, convocamos a líderes de Lean Construction, BIM y transformación digital para tener un momento de reflexión y de inspiración para continuar en este camino. Estamos muy agradecidos de contar con la presencia del profesor Luis Fernando Alarcón, nuestro director, profesor Glenn Ballard, profesor Rafael Sachs y profesor Lori Koskela en este evento. Antes de comenzar, tendremos unas palabras de nuestro gerente general, Mauricio Zócar, quien también es nuestro experto en agilidad y transformación digital. Gracias, Mauricio, por tu presencia.
Muchas gracias, Daniela. Estamos muy felices de compartir con ustedes esta gran fiesta que hemos preparado para celebrar nuestros 20 años. Evento en el cual tenemos el honor de contar con 4 grandes referentes en el mundo de Lean en construcción, a quienes aprovecho de agradecer enormemente por estar aquí junto a nosotros y compartir sus ideas. Ideas que nos inspiran y desafían no solo a hacer las cosas diferentes, sino que a pensar distinto para abordar un mundo tan complejo, volátil e incierto como el que nos toca vivir, donde lo que entendemos por éxito no solo es desafiado, sino que cambia cada vez más rápido, impulsado por el desarrollo exponencial de las tecnologías y la globalización. Acá es donde Gepro nace, con el propósito de ayudar a las organizaciones, desde las personas, a alcanzar un desempeño superior, construyendo junto a estas no solo nuevas capacidades apalancadas por métodos y tecnologías, sino que más importante, el cambio cultural. Cambio que posibilite la búsqueda incansable de entregar más valor a sus clientes, así como a sus colaboradores y comunidades, con menos desperdicio, menos burocracia, menos mal uso del talento y del tiempo, ayudando a desarrollar no solo organizaciones más resilientes y capaces de adaptarse al cambio, sino que a personas que el cambio no lo vean como un problema, sino como una oportunidad de seguir creciendo y sin miedo. Finalmente, los invito a todos ustedes a seguir hambrientos, a pensar distinto y a atreverse. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Mauricio, por tus palabras. Continuamos con nuestro webinar con unas palabras de nuestro director, Luis Fernando Alarcón.
Gracias, Daniela. Bueno, muy buenos días a todos. Es un placer para mí poder compartir con ustedes este momento, que es muy significativo para todos. Y les quiero contar un poco de cómo surgió Gepro a lo largo de los años. La historia se remonta hace ya casi 30 años, en que tuve el placer de conocer al profesor Glenn Ballard en la Universidad de California, en Berkeley, como mi profesor en ese momento, y con quien compartíamos una aspiración común: apoyar a la industria para mejorar su desempeño y lograr lo que llamamos excelencia sin límites. Este sueño se fue pasando por ciertos hitos. Uno de ellos fue la invitación que nos hizo el profesor Lauri Koskela a Finlandia a la primera reunión del International Group for Lean Construction. Esa fue una inspiración también. El segundo año, posterior a ese, el año 94, hicimos la segunda conferencia en Chile. Y eso fue también algo que nos indicó que podíamos tener raíces en este país, en las empresas que nos apoyaron. Eso significó que el año 99 la universidad abrió un concurso de centros en el que postulamos y obtuvimos financiamiento para partir. Pudimos partir desde la universidad con el Centro de Excelencia en Gestión de Producción, pero que no era un centro todavía. Nos dieron un financiamiento más pequeño, era un financiamiento para un programa de investigación en gestión de producción inspirada en Lean. Gracias al apoyo de las empresas, particularmente el Comité de Contratistas Generales de la Cámara Chilena de Construcción, logramos durante 2 años desarrollar una cantidad de actividades notable que permitió demostrar la sustentabilidad de la iniciativa que estábamos llevando a cabo. En ese periodo también logramos el apoyo del profesor Glenn Ballard y Gregory Howell, quienes vinieron todos los años a acompañarnos en el entrenamiento y en la implementación que estábamos haciendo con las empresas. Ya el año 2002, que es el aniversario que estamos celebrando, tuvimos la oportunidad de lanzar este centro el 23 de abril del año 2020, del año 2002. El rector de la Universidad Católica en ese momento, Pedro Pablo Rosso, indicó en su discurso de inauguración que los resultados que GEPUC había obtenido hasta esa fecha eran sorprendentes y demostraban cuánto se podía lograr en nuestro país si podíamos hacer universidad de empresas fluida y perseverante. 20 años después de esto, Gepro ya teniendo alas propias, Gepro es una empresa spin-off de la Universidad Católica, de DICTUC, ha continuado este valioso rol articulador entre las metodologías de excelencia, de gestión y la empresa, formando un equipo de profesionales de excelencia y una comunidad de colaboradores y empresas que en conjunto continúan buscando excelencia sin límites. Para nosotros es un orgullo contar entre nuestros clientes en este momento con empresas que han estado con nosotros por estos 20 años de continuo. Y eso es algo, yo creo que inusual y que nos enorgullece de sobremanera. Bueno, los quiero invitar ahora a escuchar las exposiciones de nuestros invitados. Ya les conté un poco la conexión, de cierta forma, de Glenn Ballard y Lauri Koskela con nuestra actividad. Muchas gracias.
Son 20 años de historia en que hemos atendido a más de 160 clientes en Chile y Latinoamérica, formado más de 5.000 alumnos y abordado más de 1.000 proyectos. Comenzaremos con las presentaciones de nuestros invitados. Tendremos 4 presentaciones para luego proceder a un conversatorio en torno a las preguntas de nuestro público presente. Los invito a escuchar de forma activa y hacer sus consultas a través de nuestro chat. Nuestro primer invitado forma parte del origen de nuestra organización. Fueron sus investigaciones las que motivaron nuestra creación y que continúan guiando nuestro trabajo diario. El profesor Glenn Ballard. Hello, Professor Ballard. Thank you for joining our celebration. Glenn Ballard es profesor, autor y orador público. Actualmente el director del Project Production System Laboratory en la Universidad de California, Berkeley. Es miembro fundador del Grupo Internacional de Construcción Lean, que se dedica al desarrollo y aplicación de conceptos y técnicas de control de producción en la industria de la construcción. Desarrolló una de las metodologías más expandidas en Lean Construction, el sistema Last Planner. En Gepro formamos a cerca de 500 alumnos anualmente en esta metodología, implementamos con más de 100 clientes y a través de nuestro software Impera hemos acompañado más de 3.000 proyectos inspirados en el trabajo del profesor Ballard. Professor, if you're ready, we can begin.
Thank you, Daniela, and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and to participate in this anniversary celebration. The title of my presentation is Paradigms and Presuppositions of the Last Planner System, as you can see on the screen, I hope. First, a few words about the terms. So I think it was in the International Group for Lean Construction Conference in 2018, Samuel Korb from the Technion and I presented a paper titled Believing is Seeing. Okay. And we argued in that paper that one of the primary obstacles to the uptake of Lean and the Lean philosophy in construction and perhaps everywhere else was paradigms. And paradigms were understood as fundamental beliefs about the nature of the world in which people act right. And we wanted to, I finally thought that it would be important for us to present our own paradigms, but I wanted to present them not as fixed beliefs, but rather as presuppositions, that is, understandings that we are still interested and willing, more than willing, to discuss, to argue for, to change if appropriate. And so in the 2016 current process benchmark for the last planner system, for the first time, we included those presuppositions, okay? And then expanded them in the 2020 benchmark document to accommodate the expansion of the last planner system to planning and control of the entire project, not only production. So I want to take this opportunity to get some feedback from people in the industry and in academia who have experience with the last planner system to help me make it even better, right? So I'm going to ask people to answer some questions about the presuppositions, but then of course it would be helpful if you knew what those were. So first of all, I'm not going to go through these one by one, but here's some paradigms that were identified in Samuel and my presentation paper. Trust is for suckers. Win-win is an illusion. What counts is that I win. You can manage projects by managing contracts, and so on. Right? So I'm going to go through these. I will provide a few words of explanation where it seems most appropriate, but I'm going to try to get through these in time so someone else will be able to speak after me. So here we go. So the first presupposition in the last planner system benchmark document is production systems are both social and technical. In other words, and I should just say that even fully automated factories are both social and technical, so long as it's humans who are designing those robots and their linkages, right? So you might think about it this way, that technology isn't sufficient. We also have to create a community, a society in each production system that enables things to get done and to get done properly. The second presupposition, all plans are forecast and all forecasts are wrong. Forecast error varies with the length and level of detail. Perhaps just an explanation about forecast error. So forecast error varies with length, that is how far ahead into the future you're forecasting, right? And with level of detail, for example, you might say, we're going to finish this project on August 3rd, 2025, right? Or we might say, we're going to finish this project in the third quarter of 2025. So, third one, planning is dynamic, does not end until a project is completed. I think that's two things are relevant here. One is that planning is just part of what we do in order to successfully pursue our project objectives or our corporate objectives, right? But the world has a way of interfering with the best laid plans. And so we also have to be ready and alert to replan as we move forward, right? I'll just read this one. I think this is perhaps plain on its face, at least the meaning. Involving those who will directly supervise or perform the work being planned results in better plans and greater ability to adapt plans when needed. It's often been thought that and said that involvement, engaging people at lower levels in organizations, motivates them. And I think it does motivate them, but what's really important is that you get better plans with their involvement. Operational performance varies with the degree of planning and preparation. I think that's pretty much gospel. Willingness to invest in planning and preparation varies with the reliability of workflow. And basically that means that if you need something in order to do your work next week, the reliability of workflow is the probability that you're going to get that prerequisite's going to be satisfied. And when I first started measuring reliable workflow, it was about a coin flip whether that was true or not, right? And nowadays, I think 80% is normal, and I think it can be much higher if we learn from our planned failures. The proper goal for PPC is 100%, and I won't give the argument for that, but you can see that argument in the document, the benchmark document. Making commitments publicly promotes care in making them and increases efforts to deliver on our promises, our commitments. The probability that commitments can and should be kept is increased when all parties practice reliable promising, as there's a process that's been developed and proven to be effective that involves a conversation between the person making the request and the person receiving the request, right? And that results in better promises. An essential prerequisite for reliable promising is that the people who are being asked to do something can say no, not arbitrarily, but by appeal to task appropriateness or readiness. So the really important part of that is that the people on the front line are the last line of defense against us making a mistake, right? Actors have discretion. That means that their choices, that what they choose to do and how they choose to do it matters, right? It matters to the project. It matters to the society, that project society. Understanding project objectives and the current and future state of the project helps actors make better choices. One more page. Perfect planning may not be possible, but it's possible to never make the same mistake twice, although sometimes very difficult. Variation in production systems can be reduced, but never eliminated. Variation that is statistically predictable can be mitigated through buffers that absorb that variation and protect targets. Variation that is not statistically predictable must be handled by building flexibility into plans and in project teams. Workflow reliability, as measured by the percentage of planned tasks completed, rises when commitments are made only to tasks that are properly defined, sound, sequenced, and sized. Labor productivity is the ratio of input to output. For example, 10 labor hours per ton of steel. That ratio is the product of this is a definition of productivity that I haven't seen around very much, and it's important. That ratio is the product of the percentage of paid labor time used productively. We call that labor utilization, and the output per unit of productive labor time, what I call labor fruitfulness. Okay. So productivity rises and falls with percent plan complete, but only in certain conditions. That level of increase or decrease is limited by the extent to which capacity exceeds demand. So you have labor hours not expended on production. And then PPC and the relationship with schedule, with time performance. Progress rises and falls with PPC to the extent that tasks are made ready and executed in the right sequence and rate. And that's a function of the extent to which capacity falls short of demand. Right? All right. So if you can and will, I'm interested in hearing your answers to these questions. Do you agree, speaking about each presupposition, do you agree with it? If not, why not? Is it clear what it means? If it's unclear, say what, provide an alternative expression, or just say what needs clarifying, or any presuppositions missing. And is there anything else you want to add? And here's where you can send them. And I appreciate your helping make the Last Planner system better.
Thank you for your presentation, Professor Ballard. Les recuerdo que pueden compartir sus preguntas en el chat para la mesa de discusión. Nuestro siguiente invitado es el profesor Rory Koskela. Hello, Professor Koskela. Thank you for joining our celebration. Rory Koskela es profesor de construcción y gestión de proyectos en la Universidad de Huddersfield. Anteriormente trabajó en la Universidad de Salford como profesor de gestión de producción y proyectos basados en la teoría Lean y en el Centro de Investigación Técnica de Finlandia. Rory es un miembro fundador y un autor prolífico del International Group for Lean Construction. Con más de 7.800 citas según Google Scholar, Lawrence es uno de los académicos más citados en gestión de la construcción. En Gepro hemos colaborado en la publicación de más de 40 papers en el IGLC a través de nuestros colaboradores, alumnos asociados y con el apoyo generoso de nuestras empresas colaboradoras y clientes, inspirado en el trabajo del profesor Koskela. Muchas gracias, profesor, por su trabajo y por compartir con nosotros el día de hoy.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for your very kind introduction. Let me thank for being invited to this important and interesting event. And congratulations to Gepro for 20 years of important work to advance construction in Chile. Today, I will be speaking about evolving frontiers of lean construction, my subjective views. What I mean by frontier, it is where we want and need to advance. And of course, in recent months, we have been too much familiarized with this concept of frontier. It is where the enemy is. Of course, we want to advance. Sometimes we need to defend. And in this context, it is a metaphor. It is where the main problems, the difficulties, barriers are. Lean construction is 30 years old or so. And as in the life of a human being, so there are different stages, and it is important to look back and to contemplate what is the current stage and situation. The childhood of lean construction was in the last decade of the last century, and we were reading books about the production system. It was not named lean then, and there was a huge difference. Construction seemed chaotic, unpredictable, and hugely inefficient. So, how could it be similar to car manufacturing or the efficiency reached in the production system? How could an entry point for lean be created in construction? And here, of course, it is Dr. Glenn Ballard who took the decisive step in developing the last panel system of production control, the aim of which was and is to protect the value-adding core of construction. So the starting point was such that it was felt that it's not possible to change all. Rather, there should be change where it counts, and where it counts is on site where the work is being done. And last panel system was tremendously effective, and for many years last panel was seen the same as lean construction. And I recently heard from Germany that there are people who still think that this is the case. However, with the success of the last planner, so we started to see problems which of course had been there, but which became visible through the success of last blunder. So, and this is these are the teenage years of lean construction. There were extensions based on solving problems, which we could see. The focus changed from site production to design management, supply management, from short-term production control to all time horizons where production is managed, from production system to organization and commercial terms, and in concrete terms, relational contract templates, target value design, and so on were developed. And this was largely in the same way as the production system had developed, namely just solving problems in front. The production system had no grand plan. It is just an accumulation of decades of problem solving, and something similar happened in lean construction. There is another understanding of lean construction that it would be just the application of the production system. To some extent, yes, there are especially point-wise methods and tools, A3, Wi-Fi's, Big Room, and many more, which could be taken as such. No big changes in the context of construction were needed. And so, and actually these developments are surprising when we look back. Much was achieved, and a new template for constructing was developed in a short time. And of course, all this is continuing, but there is now a well understood template for lean construction, which is considerably increasing efficiency. However, lean construction has reached the adulthood, and there is a question: what should I do when I am grown up? And actually, the times are changing. The times are demanding, and I think, this is my personal view, we need to reposition lean construction. The most urgent need is, of course, to use lean for sustainability benefits. And as we know, there is urgency here. However, when I look at the papers of say, International Group for Lean Construction, so I don't see a clear increase on papers on sustainability. And I don't have any good overview, but I don't think firms have started much to use lean for sustainability. This should be started now. And of course, sustainability can be promoted on the value side, the client giving the targets, and on the waste side, decreasing wasted materials, wasted times, and so on, which is promoting sustainability directly. Another topic which sadly is surfacing is that there are more and more natural catastrophes because of the climate change, and it seems that the risk and existence of war is even more visible to us. So I think we need very much to kind of open a new area for lean for humanitarian purposes, rapid reconstruction after natural catastrophes or war. Thirdly, we know that it is not easy to convince people about lean. And one reason here is that we tend to accept only beliefs that are compatible with other beliefs we have and have had. Now, there are disciplines like economics, management science, organizational science, which are very far away from thinking, from lean thinking. These disciplines don't accept the central position of production and production theorizing for, say, how we should structure organizations. And they do not accept the significance or even existence of waste. And for people who have had the basic education, say in economics, so they have tremendous difficulties in understanding when there is this usual narrative on the importance of elimination of waste. In economics decisions, the assumption is that that people and organizations do optimal decisions. Where is waste? Actually, waste would be destructive because it would imply that optimals and especially the implementation of the decisions and implementation of decisions are not optimal at all. So the lean academic community should engage with those other disciplines and to have a constructive conversation on the foundations of production and business activities. These were my views on the frontiers as they have changed. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to any questions or comments.
Thank you for your presentation, Professor Koskela. Continuaremos nuestro webinar con nuestro siguiente invitado, el profesor Rafael Sachs. Hello, Professor Sachs. Thank you for joining our celebration. You may proceed to share your presentation while I give a few final words. Rafael Sachs es profesor de ingeniería en el Technion, Israel Institute of Technology. Su investigación se centra en Building Information Modeling, más conocido como BIM, Lean Construction y la sinergia entre ellos. Es director del Instituto Nacional de Investigación de la Construcción en el Technion y dirige el Laboratorio Virtual de Construcción. Es el autor principal del manual BIM, actualmente en su tercera edición, y del libro Building Lean, Building BIM. El profesor Sachs nos acompañó también en la celebración de aniversario de 10 años de Gepro. Profesor, aún recuerdo la presentación que realizó en esa ocasión sobre la importancia de las redes sociales en los equipos de proyecto, inspiró mi trabajo de los siguientes años. En Gepro llevamos 14 años implementando BIM y Lean en diversos proyectos, tanto públicos como privados, en Chile y en Latinoamérica. Hemos modelado, coordinado más de 2 millones de metros cuadrados, incluyendo proyectos emblemáticos como el Museo de la Memoria, el primer hospital público con BIM y el Parque Titanium, entre otros. Professor, if you're ready, we can begin.
Well, thank you very much, Daniela, for the lovely, expansive, and complimentary introduction. Thank you to you and to all at Gepro and to Luis Fernando, of course, for inviting me to take part in this morning event, evening here where I am in Haifa, Israel, with the sun shining. And I'm certainly honored to share the stage with my colleagues and friends, Ben Ballard and Laurie Costella. And finally, also, of course, thank you to all my students who've contributed to some of the things I will show you today. I guess that now this is the time for something completely different, as they say, from what you've heard from the previous two speakers who have reflected on their long and valuable experience of lean construction. What I'm going to talk about is lean, BIM, and the digital transformation of the construction industry. We are at a turning point. And we're at a time when things really are beginning to change in terms of digitalization of the construction industry. I've worked for many years on the synergies between lean and BIM. Some of that work together with Laurie, and some of the key papers are listed down below. And in that time, we've had the opportunity to experiment with a number of different applications, and some of which have eventually ended up as practical commercial applications, and I'll show you those in a moment. So I'm going to speak about lean, BIM, and how they work together, and how we expect that they will bring quite a radical digital transformation in some of the construction industry. So I'll try to lay out what is the current paradigm in the industry, how the synergies of BIM and lean construction influence practice, and after that, what is digital twin construction as a new paradigm. Well, many of us have read and talked about the idea that most of current construction and traditional construction industry work with the critical path method. We have subcontracting as a really embedded hierarchy and way of building our organizations. We use information technology, but most of it is based on computer-aided drafting and in some cases on building information modeling. And we have fairly traditional commercial relationships, again, most of which revolve around design, bid, build, and subcontracting for products rather than for services. But what BIM and Lean is allowing us to do now is to imagine in a quite different way of working, which we're beginning to call the use of digital twins in construction. A digital twin idea is very common in manufacturing and in energy industries and other areas. But what fundamentally it means is that we use some sort of digital information that we depict here on the left. We use it to guide the building that we do of our construction site in practice here on the right-hand side. And then we monitor the physical reality that we have, and we replace that back into the digital twin. And then we repeat and improve as we go. So operating aircraft engines or railway locomotives, or even cars, in the car that you drive, using a digital twin at the location of some sort of control room is becoming much more common, certainly for transport and other areas. But it's still a long way off for construction. That doesn't mean that we can't imagine how that might be. And so we can imagine how that's going to work. And not only can we imagine how BIM will influence it, but also how lean concepts like plan, do, check, act cycle, Deming cycle, will play into that. And I think most of you will be familiar, if Gepro has done something over the last 20 years, you'll be familiar with the plan, do, check, act cycle. So what I want to show you now is how we can take this plan, do, check, act cycle apply it in construction and concept. So in the construction industry, rather than planning in that sense, we're both planning and modeling. In terms of modeling, we're digital modeling of a built facility using BIM technologies and processes. We're then building or fabricating parts of an offsite or onsite. We're then monitoring and inspecting what goes on, and that could be digital or manual. But the result is an intelligent interpretation of whatever we've found which we can return to those who are controlling the production, and then we can evaluate and improve. And that happens at different levels and at different levels of resolution. It can happen at a weekly level using a last planner meeting, a weekly planning meeting within the last planner system. It could happen at a look-ahead planning scale. And in the sense that companies run portfolios of projects, it happens over the scope of entire projects as companies plan projects, do them, and then improve their systems over time. Now for the heavy slide, the big, the busy slide. What this is a system workflow for digital twin design and construction, which has been devised within the scope of a European Union research project called BIM to Twin. And BIM to Twin says something fairly simple. It uses the same cycle that I showed you before. We have a digital twin, which contains both process and product information. It then builds what we're doing over here. So it has this, it has this build step. We then generate construction itself, as you see here in the physical twin. We then monitor what happens using digital technologies, and then we accumulate information as the project status. We use that to evaluate conformance, to predict performance, and then, of course, to inform our next cycle intent. And that gives us the loop that we have before. And so if I superimpose the plan, do, check, act cycle of lean construction onto the digital twin paradigm, then really what we're talking about here is designing a product and planning process in a cohesive way. That's our plan. We're then building. So we're controlling construction as it goes and controlling production day by day, week by week, even hour by hour. We're then monitoring, which is our start of our checking. We're then acting to interpret what data we collect, evaluate performance, predict performance, and then repeat the cycle many times. And of course, we can accumulate these digital twins in archives. They can be feedback for future projects. So we can have now historical digital building twins, which supplement design knowledge to enable us to design product and plan process better the next time. So you might ask, well, okay, that's all very well, but this requires a lot of technology, and that's true. There are today many technologies for monitoring construction, many of them already in use, and some of them already quite developed. So I list a few of them here. I don't intend to read through them. But what I do want to emphasize, and this is something that's changing really fast in the construction industry and in general in industry, is that we know that we monitor things on site, and that gives us data, which we need to process into information, and then to knowledge, and then into decisions and actions. Now, people generally do a lot of this, certainly at the level of master planning and look-ahead planning, and even at the level of weekly work planning. But what's changing is that a lot of this is beginning to be potentially available for automation, especially using machine learning, deep learning, rule inferencing, and other AI techniques. For example, if I lay out over here on the bottom all of those technologies that I listed before, all of those are requiring monitored data. But that data is not really useful in and of itself. And so what we really want to achieve is the kind of things like object geometry and surface textures and where people work and material flows and equipment parts and information flows and other events, so that we can compile something meaningful in terms of a project status model. And not only something that people can use, but that algorithms can use, so that we can then design, plan, and optimize, and then again repeat the cycle. So it's worth reflecting on how far we've come. What I'm showing you here is a picture of a robot, a construction robot from 1991. And this was called Technion Autonomous Interior Multi-Purpose Finishing Robot. It was the brainchild of my PhD supervisor, Professor Abram Warshawski. And the robot itself worked just fine. But the problem was that it was well ahead of its time in terms of information technologies and information processing. And what we found through the years is that we now have a fairly good understanding of how construction tech can be developed. So if we consider the theories, the design theory, information theory, and especially now lean production theory, and we understand that that forms the piles that support the foundation of BIM, building information technologies that have become very widespread in construction. And that if on the top of that foundation, we apply monitoring technologies, if we have people who are able to identify business process needs, real use cases, and if we have entrepreneurship, which is willing to take risks and apply venture capital, then together, those can bring together ideas, investment, and implementation in innovation. And finally, of course, adoption into industry. And this is what we like to call the house of construction tech. You're probably aware that construction tech has become an enormous industry in many countries, and that huge amounts of venture capital and investment are being applied, not so much to the construction industry, but to the construction tech industry. And so things like the robot that you saw before are now much more practical. And they're resting on those foundations, both of lean construction and of design theory and of information theory, and on the processes, people, and technologies of BIM. And I show you this quick little video, not in and of itself, but simply as one example of the kind of technology and application of automation that's becoming possible only through that house of construction tech and bringing it all together. So if I give you just some other quick examples, startup companies like Build-Ups here in Israel are now active throughout the world. And they're able with 360 cameras to give you a very good interpretation of what's actually being done on site. These slides are from an experiment we did in our lab a few years ago, but they're available commercially. Another one is a company called Versatile, who monitor tower cranes, and through machine learning provide a great wealth of information about what's actually happening on site, including value-adding activities, non-value-adding activities, waste, where waste is coming from, what time is being spent on. And up to the point now where a company like VisiLean offers construction control rooms of this kind, using software that is entirely built on the concept of lean construction and BIM that we developed some years ago in research. So if we look ahead, we can see a construction industry paradigm developing that is quite different from the one that we have today. And actually, while today we have the critical path method, subcontracting, and so on, what we might be seeing in the future is a paradigm where the operating system really is lean production planning and control, rooted in the ideas of the PDCA and the LPS, where the organizational structure actually is platform providers to provide all of the technology and the controls with subcontracted service in the ways that companies like Uber manage taxi services or many other platform companies offer technology that is wrapped up in the organization and in the provision of service. And of course, in the information technology, we would see cloud BIM, subgraphs for project intent, status, and all of the IT infrastructure that's required to support the digital twins I showed you before. I think, sadly, we're going to continue seeing commercial relationships which remain stuck in let's say, cutthroat competitive paradigms of design, bid, build, because rather than seeing collaborations, we're going to see much more competition because much more information will be available to many more people. And so you may, and of course you can read much more about this, we might see in the major companies first and in bigger construction sites first, but slowly diffusing into the rest, new kinds of construction, which so far we've been calling digital twins for construction, but to the extent that it might become a real paradigm, we may be seeing in years to come something called digital twin construction, where although we may not see automation on site, we may still see people working. A lot of the management and control may actually be done in far more automated ways. So thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you for your presentation, Professor Sachs. Nuestra siguiente presentación será realizada en español por un invitado cercano a nuestra empresa, nuestro director y fundador, el profesor Luis Fernando Alarcón. Profesor Alarcón, ¿puede proceder a compartir su presentación mientras doy algunas palabras? Luis Fernando Alarcón es profesor titular del Departamento de Ingeniería y Gestión de la Construcción de la Escuela de Ingeniería UC. Es fundador del Centro de Excelencia en Gestión de Producción GEPUC y, por supuesto, de Gepro. Es miembro fundador del International Group for Lean Construction y GLC. El profesor Alarcón ha tenido un rol fundamental en la introducción de metodologías modernas de gestión en Chile y Latinoamérica, generando puentes para el conocimiento, la investigación y colaboración con el resto del mundo. Actualmente estamos viviendo un periodo de cambios y desafíos importantes para nuestro país. Y si bien es tentador pensar cómo estos cambios nos afectan a nosotros, también es importante cuestionarnos cómo nosotros podemos también aportar desde nuestras posiciones en la sociedad. Con su presentación sobre Lean aplicado al sector público, Luis Fernando nos desafía. Si estás listo, Luis Fernando, podemos proceder.
Muchas gracias, Daniela, por la presentación. Bueno, como decía Daniela, Lean en el sector público creo que puede tener un impacto sobre toda la sociedad y es algo que debiéramos impulsar. Y esto es algo que ya fue recogido inicialmente hace varios años por la comunidad Lean en construcción, pero que hoy día se está expandiendo a otras áreas de la economía y eso es lo que quiero compartir con ustedes hoy día. Bueno, Lean Thinking tiene 5 principios. Este tal vez es lo más conocido desde el punto de vista de la publicación de Womack y Jones de los años 90. Identificar valor, ¿cierto? Definidos desde la perspectiva del cliente, identificar la cadena de valor, buscar que se produzca flujo para acortar esperas, inventarios y lograr que se produzca tirando y no produciendo, empujando, atendiendo requerimientos y necesidades del cliente y buscar siempre la perfección. Estos principios pueden ser aplicados prácticamente a cualquier organización, ¿ya? Y las organizaciones del sector público son un gran candidato. Hay muchísimos ámbitos en el sector público donde puede ser aplicado. Ya hemos visto hoy día en las presentaciones las aplicaciones en el área de infraestructura, construcción, pero salud, transporte, gestión de procesos, servicios, emprendimiento. Hay un larguísimo etcétera de todas las áreas donde se puede aplicar esto en el sector público. Tenemos resultados notables, por ejemplo, en salud. Y uno se pregunta, ¿cuánto necesitamos de esto para hacer mejor la prestación de salud en distintos países, en Chile y en el extranjero? Aquí hay algunos resultados que han sido reportados en publicaciones que son realmente extraordinarios. ¿Cómo nos gustaría tenerlos aquí? En Chile, nosotros en nuestra investigación hemos podido también ver cómo esto puede impactar a las empresas. Estos son reportes de empresas de aumento de productividad en que las hemos acompañado en su esfuerzo por introducir prácticas Lean. Ahora, ¿qué significa aplicar el pensamiento Lean en el sector público? Proporciona valor tanto para el gobierno como a las empresas y a todos los socios de las cadenas de suministro por igual. O sea, aquí nos beneficiamos todos. Además, tiene como objetivo mejorar la eficiencia para mejorar la eficiencia también de la cadena de suministro, la rentabilidad, a través de un enfoque de eliminar desperdicios y mejorar la confiabilidad de la planificación y el flujo de trabajo. Y eso también tiene un beneficio general para todos los que participamos de una sociedad. Existe Lean en el sector público y es una organización que busca difundir estas prácticas en el sector público, donde a veces, sobre todo en el sector construcción, es más difícil implementarlas. LIPS, que es la organización que lidera esta iniciativa, fue creada por iniciativa del profesor Ballard hace ya 14 años atrás aproximadamente. Y en principio se aplicó principalmente en la construcción. Nosotros organizamos una conferencia de esta organización en Chile en el 2017, les voy a mostrar eso, y empezamos a tratar de ampliar el enfoque para mostrar distintas aplicaciones de Lean en el sector público, y hoy día tenemos esa oportunidad nuevamente. El año 2017 se hizo en Chile, y este año, fíjense ustedes que somos el primer país en Latinoamérica en organizar una conferencia de este tipo, y el año 2022 lo vamos a tener nuevamente acá. Por eso digo que es una oportunidad de conocer las experiencias internacionales y nacionales de implementación de Lean en el sector público, que creemos que puede tener un tremendo beneficio para toda la sociedad. Hay casos destacados que han sido mostrados en conferencias anteriores. Por ejemplo, la transformación de la construcción en Finlandia. Es un esfuerzo público-privado que se ha llevado a cabo desde el año 2008 hasta actual, y que ha mostrado que es posible hacerlo, que muchas de las limitaciones que existen en el sector público, sobre todo en la construcción, tienen que ver con normativas, contractuales, cosas que se pueden hacer o no se pueden hacer en una institución pública, pero aquí está la oportunidad de ver cómo se puede hacer. Hay organizaciones como Transport London, que es el metro de Londres, que han introducido Lean en el gobierno. Tuvimos la presentación del gobierno del estado de Washington en nuestra última conferencia. La transformación de la construcción de instalaciones en la Universidad de California, San Francisco. Esa es algo que todavía está en proceso, pero que tiene toda una historia que me gustaría poder contarla nuevamente en Chile, porque vi una presentación muy, muy interesante en la última conferencia de Lean Construction en Canadá. La transformación de Lean de Highways England, otra institución pública notable que ha introducido estas prácticas en su día a día, y creo que de la cual podemos aprender. Por eso es que más que mi presentación es más que nada una invitación a que nos ayuden a introducir Lean en el sector público. Tenemos esta conferencia el 29 de noviembre al 1 de diciembre de este año. Tenemos una oportunidad de aprender, de conocer, de conectarnos con el mundo, conectarnos con experiencias internacionales que creemos que serían bienvenidas en nuestro país. La pregunta es si es posible aplicar Lean en el sector público en Chile. Bueno, yo creo que la respuesta la dan los casos que están aquí. Nosotros ya el año 2006 introdujimos un estudio de cómo mejorar la gestión de los procesos del MIMBU en la región metropolitana, que mostró que se podía realmente reducir los tiempos de procesamiento de, en este caso, los subsidios de vivienda, de forma realmente notable. O sea, pasar de muchas semanas a una semana. Ahí teníamos, por ejemplo, que el tiempo que agrega valor de este procesamiento era de 2 a 12 horas, y en realidad tomaba entre 7 y 24 días hábiles. Se podía hacer mucho aquí. Y logramos que eso se hiciera visible para que pudieran actuar. Codelco, una compañía pública que ha sido acompañada por GEPUC en sus primeros pasos en Lean, no digo que seamos nosotros los que hemos hecho la transformación ahí, pero ya hace muchos años partimos ayudando a entrenar y a, en cierta forma, poner una semilla en algunas de las divisiones de Codelco. Y los acompañamos en implementaciones que lograron resultados también muy notables, ¿no? Mejoramientos en todo tipo de indicadores que fueron muy, muy importantes en su momento. Actualmente Codelco está haciendo una iniciativa a nivel corporativo, la iniciativa C+, que busca implementar Lean Management a nivel de toda la empresa. El Ministerio de Educación es otra organización que tuvimos, de hecho, presentando en la conferencia del 2017. Ahí se hizo una intervención en los procesos que en ese momento estaban había grandes cambios en el ministerio y había que hacer más eficiente esa ejecución de esos cambios. Se crearon mapas de proceso para mejorar la gestión, se hicieron una serie de intervenciones que fueron acompañadas por Gepro en ese momento. El Ministerio de Obras Públicas fue coorganizador de la conferencia LIPS del año 2017 y ahí también hicimos intervenciones y un estudio que nos permitió publicar un capítulo de este libro de propuestas para Chile, de oportunidades para el mejoramiento de la gestión de proyectos de infraestructura pública en Chile en ese momento. El Metro de Santiago fue también otro de nuestros invitados. O sea, aquí tienen ustedes una serie de organizaciones que realmente están en el sector público y que han demostrado que se puede implementar esta filosofía de gestión en el sector público con excelentes resultados y nosotros esperamos que esta conferencia que estamos organizando a fines de año motive a otras organizaciones a emprender este mismo camino. Estos son algunos resultados del metro que fueron mostrados en una conferencia anterior. Desafíos que hay para aplicar Lean en el sector público. Definir valor para los clientes puede ser un desafío realmente. El valor social y la provisión equitativa son más difíciles de medir, pero es algo que hay que aprender. También hay que ser capaces de definir y gestionar procesos de extremo a extremo. Y eso puede ser difícil. También es difícil exponer y resolver problemas. Es un atributo que no se premia en el sector público, aunque es una de las expresiones básicas de Lean, digamos, para hacer Lean. Hay que exponer y resolver esos problemas. Ahora, la política a veces impide que eso sea tan sincero en el sector público. Y obviamente desarrollar una cultura de alto desempeño. ¿Cómo quisiéramos que existiera una cultura de alto desempeño en todas nuestras organizaciones públicas? Bueno, con esto yo estoy terminando mi presentación y quiero reforzar solamente la invitación a que nos ayuden a promover esta conferencia que creemos que es muy importante para nuestro país y también para el mundo, porque aquí asisten personas de muchos países distintos y muchas de estas personas también van a seguir online los contenidos de esta conferencia, por lo tanto tenemos una responsabilidad también a nivel mundial de promover estas prácticas. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, profesor, por su presentación y por el desafío. Continuaremos nuestro webinar con un conversatorio entre nuestros invitados, moderado por el profesor Luis Fernando Alarcón, en donde se abordarán algunas de las preguntas que se realizaron por el chat, gracias a todos los que compartieron sus preguntas. La conversación se realizará en idioma inglés. Recuerden que pueden optar por escuchar en idioma original o traducido. Profesor Luis Fernando, le paso la palabra.
Thank you very much, Daniela. We are going to start with thank you very much for the presentations, Laurie, Glenn, and Rafael. We have some questions from the audience. One of the questions that we have here is how to be lean when we have to prevent disruptions and risks. And this is something probably for any of us could answer this question. I don't know if somebody wants to be first. Glenn, maybe you could be.
Oh, here we go. Well, I'm wondering what, or don't we always want to prevent disruption and risk?
You're right.
Yeah. So I'm not. So it's not a peculiar problem, right? It's an ever-present problem. And I don't think I have a snappy answer for that. But I mean, one thing that we've been looking at, and it's not entirely new, is how do we. So going back to that comment I made earlier in my presentation about differentiating between risks and uncertainties that can be buffered and those that cannot. And those that cannot offer perhaps the most interesting territory to further develop, and that is building flexibility in plans and in teams, right? In people and in the processes of plans that we develop to guide ourselves with. And I think that's how we would, and that's certainly at the heart of Lean. So.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. I have a similar question from the audience. Well, I don't know if it's similar, but I think I can interpret this. Is how to work on lean construction in uncertain times. I think probably Daniela Bertin is the author of this question. I know her. Probably she's in charge of planning in a company. At the global, her responsibility is on the planning system in the company. And probably she's referring to COVID times too, pandemic times. I don't know if anybody wants to take that question.
Yeah, I'll be happy to try to answer that, Ms. Fernando. I think that in part of our challenge, of course, is how to go about implementing Lean in very, very busy and successful times. And we've been working with a very big construction company in Japan recently. And we find that one of the biggest challenges to making any kind of changes in the production systems in the company is that people are very set in their ways. And when people are short-staffed, when projects are stressed, then in particular, site teams become very protective of their current ways of doing things and not very amenable or open to changes. And I think that perhaps when major shocks come along, and when you speak of uncertainty, I guess in part you're talking about uncertainty and demand. And I think that when there are lower parts in demand, or there is slightly less stress on a company, then sometimes that might just be the right opportunity for learning new ways of working. Certainly applies the imperative to change, because it means that unless you can improve productivity, you may not survive as a company. So I don't think there are any particular tricks or tips of how to do Lean in uncertain times. But perhaps Larry or Glenn have some other wisdom to contribute.
Any other thought about that?
Well, just to tag on, I mean, I think that as turbulence increases, I think we need to increase the focus on flexibility. Right? So to say that perhaps the obvious, but how to do that. And I think Raphael himself has published papers that indicate that engagement in processes like the last planner actually promote that flexibility. So it's not just a matter of being able to stick to the plan. It's also a matter of being able to replan, redirect, readjust, turn lemons into lemonade, if you will. That is, that exploit opportunities that may at first glance look like just problems, right? So, and I think that's very much a matter of leadership in organizations. And the leaders, how they react to that stress, I think it just percolates right through the organization. And if they kind of shrink up and become less flexible, right, that's exactly the wrong reaction.
Yeah, I agree. If I may, just add a comment.
Sure.
So I wanted to add this interesting comment. Indeed, Glenn referred to work that we've done, and a lot of it had to do with trying to understand the social aspects of last planner implementation. And I think that that's really interesting in the context of the uncertainty that the last planner system enabled people to do, was to create social networks and social connections between and across the subcontractors. And when that happened, they were able to plan and be much more agile and much more cohesive. And clearly, with COVID-19 and the constraints that it applies on meeting physically, that makes it's much more difficult to build those social networks. So just a brief comment on that aspect of COVID-19 and its impact.
Thank you very much, Rafael. I have a question for Laurie. Laurie.
If I comment on this.
Okay, go ahead.
So, yes. So, of course, there are different kinds of, if uncertainty is in a daily level, of course, the country is to control cycles to be daily or almost and for sure there's uncertainty which is more and now, for example, airports seem to have experiencing problems of kind of demand uncertainty. As we know, so many airports are in chaos at the moment. They reduced the workforce when there was not much to do, and it was not seen that flying there's a kind of accumulated demand for flying and what is the result is this chaos. I went to Manchester Airport just today to solve one related problem.
Thank you, Laurie. I have another question for you, or maybe for other speaker. The question is, do you think that Lean will become obsolete in the future?
I guess you asked me. Lean as a word, perhaps. Of course, it should be the mainstream idea. It is the best idea we know at the moment. So it should be just production management or design management and so on. The beginning, Lean was an underdog promoted by a small minority of people who must have seen to be strange by the world, and still there is this kind of contradiction between Lean and the conventional ideas in management and economics, as I mentioned, and that discussion needs to be accelerated and made the Lean ideas and theories need to be presented more locally.
Thank you, Laurie. I have a question for Rafael. Rafael, what is the role of Lean in the? We already had your presentation, but if you can summarize, maybe what do you think is the role of Lean in the Industry 4.0?
Okay, so Industry 4.0 is an interesting concept because it's very broad and it builds on the idea that you have before Industry 4.0, you've had 3.0, 2.0, and 1.0. And if you have a look at what those things mean and what their impacts are, Industry 1.0, of course, is the original industrial revolution where we moved from craft production to manufacturing and production lines. And then we had in the manufacturing industries, Industry 2.0 is automation of production, and 3.0 is communications and IT, and 4 is digital twins and very broad automation and control of production systems. So often you see in the literature, and people will ask the question, well, what will construction 4.0 look like? And I think the best answer is we're barely beyond construction 1.0, and we certainly have not achieved construction 2.0 yet, because in that sense, we don't yet have real automation of construction sites. And so I think that what we're actually going to see is a sort of a different development. We may well see a sort of a construction 4.0 idea, but without the 2.0 and 3.0 on the way. And the reason I say that is because what I was trying to explain in terms of digital twin construction is that the construction tech revolution that we're really going through now is more to do with monitoring what happens on site, providing accurate information of what's going on, and allowing us to do simulations and optimizations of production plans. But it's not actually about automation on site. And for that matter, it's not very much about automation in prefabrication or off-site. And so, unlike the digital twin production or manufacturing, where we really have computer systems controlling robots in factories that are making things, we're much more likely to see in construction that we will have computerized production control software that is giving instructions to people, and many people who are continuing to put things on the site. So it's a kind of an inverted development, and I wouldn't call it either 2, 3, or 4.0, but simply a new digital twin form of construction.
Thank you, Rafael. And this is a question open because I think that, for instance, Lori has done some work, published some work on this, but I think Glenn and Rafael also know about this subject. How do you can you combine agile and lean in project management? I think that I read a paper from Lori about this some time ago. Maybe is how to combine agile and lean in project management.
And actually, let add to my airport example. I actually answer to the question how can lean be implemented for airports. What have been done is scenario planning. What can we do if the number of passengers is doubling in 6 months or so? This is one form of flexibility. Of course, it is not such a lean idea, but it comes from general management. But failing to leads to big wastage, as we know.
Yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, it seems to me that we're really talking about methods, right? And lean doesn't have a Bible of methods. We're recreating and creating them all the time. And so I think that it's kind of a category error to say that to counterpose lean and agile, because it's based upon where the method originated, not its fitness for your purpose, right? And so I think it's a non-issue. I think there's already agile concepts in play in lean, and I don't think we need to. I just caution against judging the suitability of methods by their origin as opposed to by their utility. And we're always creating. We have all kinds of. We need more agility, right? And there's attention to it sometimes under different terms like resilience, right? And so that's my take.
Thank you very much, Glenn, and thank you very much, Rafael and Lori. I think we are already in time to close this conversation. So I will leave Daniela now to do her job.
Gracias, Luis Fernando. Quisiera agradecer nuevamente a nuestros invitados por participar de nuestro webinar. Thank you, Professor Ballard, Professor Sachs, Professor Koskila, and Professor Alarcón for your participation. Quedaron varias preguntas por responder, pero es nuestro compromiso abordar cada una de ellas. En las próximas semanas publicaremos las respuestas en nuestras redes sociales para que nos estén atentos a esa información. Para finalizar, tendremos algunas palabras de nuestro gerente de desarrollo de negocios, Patricio Gahona, quien es también nuestro experto en Lean Management y planificación estratégica. Gracias, Patricio, por tu presencia.
Buenos días. En nombre de Gepro queremos agradecerle su activa participación en esta mesa de conversación para celebrar nuestros 20 años. Hoy hemos podido conocer la impresión de importantes referentes mundiales, quienes con su habitual gentileza nos han compartido su mirada presente y futura para hacernos reflexionar y desafiarnos en seguir buscando esta excelencia sin límites que tanto nos caracteriza. Como equipo Gepro nos sentimos orgullosos de lo realizado en este tiempo y en las comunidades que se han formado, en donde hemos apoyado a transformar la industria, introduciendo nueva filosofía, metodologías de gestión y siempre involucrando a las personas en este proceso. Los invitamos a seguir el camino de colaboración conjunta para recoger las impresiones expuestas en esta sesión y desplegarlos en favor de la industria. No nos queda más que agradecer su participación el día de hoy y animarlos a seguirnos en nuestras redes sociales, en donde en lo inmediato podrán conocer las respuestas a las innumerables preguntas que quedaron sin contestar por temas de tiempo, y también podrán conocer nuestros futuros eventos y de qué forma podemos ayudarlos en este viaje. Muchas gracias a todos, hasta luego y feliz 20 años de Gepro.
Gracias, Patricio, por tus palabras. Hemos llegado al término de nuestro webinar. Agradecer a todos los presentes por acompañarnos en nuestra celebración, particularmente a las organizaciones que nos apoyaron en su difusión, el Centro de Investigación GEPUC, el Magíster de Administración de la Construcción UC, MAC, Educación Profesional de Ingeniería de la Universidad Católica, el Instituto de Lean Construction de Perú, la Comunidad de Buenas Prácticas, Camacol, Muntevi, a nuestros clientes que nos han acompañado en este webinar, Codelco, Entel, M3 Ingeniería, BET, EMIN, SAM, COPEC, Euroconstructora, LD, gracias a todos los que nos han acompañado. Exalumnos y geprosianos, por supuesto, gracias por celebrar con nosotros.